What's up, guys? This is Guys at Magic. This is David, Hunter, and Shane coming at you for our legendary creature review for Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So the way that this works is we're going to be going through each one of the legendary creatures. We're going to be giving you our ideas and our thoughts about these cards, as well as just giving you a general grade on what we think about them, whether we like them, dislike them, potentially build a deck around them, stuff like that. So to kick this off, we're going to start off with Icingdeath Frost Tyrant. Icingdeath Frost Tyrant is 2 white for a legendary creature dragon. It's a 4/3 with flying and vigilance, and it states that whenever it dies, create Icingdeath Frost Tongue, a legendary white equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and equip 2. Hunter, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, hello. I want to say that this is not very good. The reason I say it's not very good is because ultimately it boils down to a 4-mana 4/3 flying vigilance dragon. That's kind of it. I mean, the equipment is cool when it dies, but if you bring out your commander and the equipment is still there, once your commander dies, you don't get 2 equipment. It's still just a 1 legendary equipment. Yeah, that's how I feel. I'm not a fan of this card. I don't think it's a good commander at all. It does nothing for synergy. There's nothing that can go into it to improve this effect. I don't like it.
I think this. Tell me why you love this card, Shane.
Oh, I just love this card. Period, dude. I think it's a great card. I get that you don't like it, but okay. Think about this too. When the creature is equipped, boom, you tap down a creature. That's amazing for beating down. If this wasn't monocolored, I'd give it a higher grade, but I get that it's not the best commander because it's mono white, but the card's fucking rad.
Even outside of the fact that it is mono white, because I don't know, I think that any monocolor commander could be made better by just having a second color added to it. I think this card is really cool for equipment style decks because oftentimes in those decks you need creatures and you need equipment and you need to make sure that you're balancing that out and getting that right ratio in your deck. And this literally serves as both. The problem, however, being is that it's not gonna do both of those at the same time unless your commander has died.
Yeah. Exactly. That's my whole point.
4 mana, 4/3 flying vigilance, though, dude. That white land is 5 mana to activate a 3/4 flyer, and you're getting way more. I don't know. I like this card still, but I guess it's not the best commander.
Don't get me wrong. The stats wise, this thing is solid. 4 mana for a 4/3 flyer with vigilance is great. All in all, though, I'm going to give this thing a D. I would not build a deck around this. I think there's better equipment style commanders out there. Not my flavor.
Yep, I'm also giving it a D.
Oh, fuck you. I'm giving it a C. Bringing that grade average up just a little bit.
All right, well, moving on.
Still a D.
Whatever.
Moving on, then we have another legendary dragon that we're going to talk about. So next up we have Nadaar, Selfless Paladin. This is 2 and a white. It's a 3/3 legendary creature dragon knight. It's got vigilance and it says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon. It also says other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. Shane, what are your thoughts on this one?
I like it a lot, but I don't think I like it for a commander again. I think this card is extremely strong by itself, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it does enough to be a commander, I guess. And I mean, maybe you have a whole deck that synergizes around going into the dungeon, which is awesome. And that can maybe be there eventually, but it's a little underwhelming in EDH as a commander.
Hunter?
Yeah, I said the payoff is too tiny for this just to finish a dungeon. So once you finish one dungeon, doesn't matter if you complete another dungeon. You're only going to get that 1/1. That's not doing a whole lot. And then after you do that, all you're doing is just venturing in for the rest of the time this commander's out. It's not enough mono white venture cards to assist that.
Oh, I think that's interesting because I think you don't actually need a whole lot of white venture cards to assist. Whenever I look at this card, I actually think, how can I abuse this with like flicker or blink shenanigans? That way I can have this thing constantly entering the battlefield over and over again. We could do that with things like Conjurer's Closet. There was a new white version of Conjurer's Closet we just got printed in either this set or in Strixhaven. I don't remember. Actually, you know what? It might have been in Modern Horizons.
Circle. It was this one.
There you go. Thank you so much for saving me there. We've had so much Magic content. There are so many more Magic sets come out here recently. I'm losing track of which one's which. But you can have this thing bounce in and out constantly to get it to go through those dungeons, and that gives you value on its own. I do think that the +1/+1 thing doesn't really matter. It's not doing enough for me, so I do agree with you guys on that. All in all, as far as grades go, what would you guys give it? Hunter, you start.
I'm giving it an F. I don't like this as a commander at all. Not a big fan of the dungeon mechanic itself. Some of them are pretty good dungeons, but this is an F for me, man. Not a good commander.
Ouch. Shane, how about you?
I'm probably gonna stick around with D. I'm not a dick. I'm not gonna give it an F, but can't give it a C, dude. So it's gotta be a D.
I'm going to give it a D as well. I agree with Shane on this one. This is not my favorite commander out there. There are some hoops that you can jump through where you could potentially flicker this thing like indefinitely, but it's super, super hard to put that together and very fragile. So average grade on this one is about a D. Next up, we have Oswald Fiddlebender. He'll fiddle your bender. He is 1 and a white for our legendary creature, Gnome Artificer. He's a 2/2, and he has Magical Tinkering. For a 1 mana, and you can tap him, it says sacrifice an artifact, search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana's value. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle, activate only as a sorcery. Hunter, you kick us off with this one. What are your thoughts?
Well, activate only as a sorcery is dumb. Because they've been doing that constantly, and it sucks. I wrote down this is doing a worse version of In Search of Greatness. In Search of Greatness being that green mana spell from Strixhaven. No, sorry, from Kaldheim. That said, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a permanent spell from your hand and with mana value equal to 1 plus the highest mana value among permanents you control without paying its mana cost. This is that for artifacts, except you have to pay a white and tap him. And you have to sack the artifact. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but I still think this can be effective in the right build.
I super disagree with everything that you just said. I feel like that's comparing apples to oranges. I feel like this is not... I feel like you can't compare these two because this gets to search your library, and the sacrificing an artifact thing can actually be a positive still. So this to me is artifact pod, which means that this creature, as a legendary creature helming your deck, this is going to be a deck that is scary consistent at what it does.
Yeah, this card's insanely broken.
It doesn't need to draw into whatever it wants because it's just going to tutor for it.
I mean, I don't know about EDHD, but this could like make waves in way older formats too. This isn't nuts card.
So
you can only activate as a sorcery.
I will give you that.
True.
That is definitely a negative. Activate only as a sorcery sucks.
True.
But you're grabbing whatever artifact you want, so long as the thing that you sacked has the right mana value here. But I mean, if you're building your deck correctly, like it shouldn't be difficult for you to actually like start grabbing the pieces that you want to be able to like put stuff together, whether it be like you're locking your opponents out or whatever the case is. I originally put this thing down as a C for my grade. I think I'm going to change it. I'm going to put this as a B. I don't think this is like a kill on sight. Like you need to absolutely deal with this because he does still require a little bit of setup. But I think this is a solid commander.
I gave it a C.
I was gonna give it a B, and then David took my B.
I mean, we can agree.
Yeah, I guess.
All right.
Yeah, this card's nuts.
Very disgruntled B there from Shane. So
All
that
right,
puts
I'll
it
give it
as
a
an
B too.
average B.
Moving on.
So next up, we're going to move over, and this is where we start our blue cards. We have Grazilaxx, Illithid Scholar. I'll be saying that wrong. Man, some of these D&D cards are really going to be like, they're putting me to the test here. So this is a blue and a blue for a legendary creature horror. It's a 3/2, and it says whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. It also says whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Shane, you start us off with this one.
I like blue cards a lot. And I kind of like what this does because it's like a pillow 40 and then you draw cards. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a pretty solid blue choice. I'm not going to say it's the best blue choice. Obviously, there's nuts cards, but it's going to be a fun one to build. Yeah, you probably, I don't know. I'm jumping ahead of things a little bit, but I might even look at this like a high C, low B because I like the potential.
Solid. Hunter.
I said this is cool. It gives protection from flash creatures. Card draw, always nice. Seems like a really good card. I think this is dope.
So protection from flash creatures in this case being that like whenever they flash something in, your creature gets to go back to your hand instead of getting blocked. Not that the whole like protection mechanic, just to clarify.
That's correct.
Okay. So yeah, I completely agree with everything that you guys have already said. Drawing cards is always a good thing. Aside from that, I mean, recasting things, any of those creatures, also potentially really powerful. And if anything, I mean, that might actually just make your opponent not want to block your stuff so that you can't reuse and abuse any ETB triggers. I think this card's dope. I'm going to give this one a B.
This one might be my favorite of the monocolored commanders. So I'm giving it a B as well.
All right, fine. Fuck it. I'll give it a solid B. Because I love blue and I love what this does.
I love how angry you are with grading.
All right, fine. I'll give it a B.
Fine.
So the
All right.
average is a B.
3 Bs make a B.
Wow.
Next up, we have Iymrith, Desert Doom. I don't know why I read that as Storm. It's the lightning bolt in the background of the card. So this is 3 blue for a legendary creature dragon at Mythic. It's 5/5 with flying, and it says that it has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. It also says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Hunter, I would love to hear your thoughts on this one.
Well, if you have cards that can give this vigilance, it's great. But mono blue has a hard time doing that. So it's not that good. And I'm never a fan of commanders being so selfish. So, for example, when only this deals combat to a player, draw a card. If other creatures, if it said whenever a creature draw a card, that'd be dope. But it's very selfish, so there's not really a whole synergy thing going on with this as a commander.
Okay, so it sounds like you wish it was a little bit more similar to the one that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Bingo.
So I'm still interested in this because it does have Ward 4, and we know how much you love.
Oh, you
the
fucking
Ward
love
mechanic.
Ward,
Oh,
dude.
I love Ward 4, and that's why I wrote, if you give this vigilance, then it's great. Because you have to tap it to attack, then it doesn't have Ward anymore.
Yeah, but that's not as, I mean, if you play with this in Standard, I know we're not talking about Standard, but this card's a fucking powerhouse in Standard. Like, it can still do some shit, dude, even tapped. It basically does what the last card does, only a little more expensive, not as good. But it's a bigger body, it's got flying. Like, this is still a pretty solid choice for blue, I think, because you're still drawing a card. I get it's being selfish, but this could potentially draw you 3 a turn. So that's pretty, don't forget about that.
I mean, if you have no cards in hand, yeah.
Exactly. I
So
don't know, don't sleep on it.
my thoughts on this one being is if you are playing mono blue and you have no cards in your hand, you're probably doing something. Well, you're doing something either really wrong or really right. Either you are casting a ton of things every single turn and you're using this to pseudo refill your hand because you're only going to draw back up to 3, or you have like no draw engines that are actually running or working. So this thing will only draw you the 1. I don't know. My thoughts on this one really just kind of being that it's a big body. It's a cool card. I love the artwork on this, and I think this is probably my favorite of the monocolor legendary dragons in this set. Ultimately, however, as a commander, I'm not super sold on this card. My last little retort here being, Hunter, how you bring up like the if this thing had vigilance and how blue's not very good at it. Blue is still really good whenever it comes to messing around with artifacts. So if you do want to equip this with something that would be able to provide that vigilance. I think that it's actually, I don't think it's that difficult to do in this color, basically, is what I'm getting at. Ultimately, however, I am going to give this thing a D, just because I think that there are better card draw engines out there. It's a cool body, but it's not doing a whole lot for me.
I'm also giving it a D. I'm not a fan.
Giving it a C. I'm not even mad about it.
Always got to be different.
Uh-huh.
So the average.
I'll make it a
D.
C. Ah, damn it.
Then next up, we have Acererak the Archlich, which is 2 and a black for a legendary creature zombie wizard. It says, whenever it enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, which is one of the dungeons, return it to its owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. It also states that whenever it attacks for each opponent, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token unless a player sacrifices a creature. And this thing is a 5/5. This is probably the card that I understood the least before actually playing around with this one. Shane,
Yeah,
what are your
pretty
thoughts
weird.
on this?
It's cool. I think I should have done a little more homework because I have an idea that I'm going to throw to you guys, and you tell me if it's a thing or not. In black, is there cards that say ETBs don't affect or don't trigger? Because I know that there's some in white, but
There's colorless options.
okay, because this card is nuts. If you play it on curve and you just throw it out on turn 3 and you get the 5/5 body and you start attack, like if you start thinking about this card more as like not only just getting into the dungeon, if you can play this turn 3 and keep the 5/5 and attack, that's crazy. And if that's on like if you can build your deck around that kind of thing, this could be pretty nuts.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying in my write-up. If it didn't have the ETB, then you could really have fun. There are things that you can do, like Torpor Orb. Torpor Orb is 2 mana, 2 colorless mana, so it can
There
go
you
into
go.
this.
Turn
It's an
2.
artifact. It's an artifact that says creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. So that is perfect. If you could do that on curve, that would be nuts. And I also wrote that there's only 7 cards in this set of Adventures in the Forgotten Realms that can venture in mono black, and that's including lands. So there's not a whole bunch besides this card that can do that to help it stay on the battlefield faster.
So whenever I originally read this card, I thought it had to venture into the dungeon, and then like once you were in there, you could recast this thing as a creature. And then after playing around with this, I realized you actually have to complete that dungeon, which means that you could be casting this thing multiple times before the body is actually going to stick. He is surprisingly difficult to actually be a creature.
Yeah.
I know that on social media there were a couple of like people making waves that there are ways that you can make this dude go infinite. All of those require that this be in a deck that includes an additional color. So just in mono black, if he is the commander, you will not have you will not have access to that. I really don't actually like this card for the most part. It's 3 mana to venture. I originally put down a D. I'm going to go ahead and just change this. This card is an F for me.
I gave this card a D. I'm sticking with a D. I think if you can get it. Luckily, the Tomb of Annihilation is the one dungeon that is the fastest to complete. You can do it just with 3 entries. But once you get past that, then it's just a 3 mana 5/5. But you do have to pay that commander tax if it is your commander. So it's still a D for me.
You just mentioned going through it in only 3 entries as well. That means that you're hitting. That means you're hitting Oubliette, which really screws you up and sets you back too. So you're
saying.
biting a bullet.
I don't know if you've done that yet, but I did that, and it fucking sucks. It was not worth. I'm gonna give this card a D as well then.
Seems like the average there is a D.
For commander, yes.
Yep.
Or as the commander.
So next up we have Asmodeus. The Archfiend is 4 black for a legendary creature, Devil God. He's a 6/6 with Binding Contract. It says if you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library face down instead. You may pay 3 black to draw 7 cards. You may also pay a black to return all cards exiled with Asmodeus the Archfiend to their owner's hand, and you lose that much life. Oh boy, I have thoughts and opinions.
You go
Shay?
first.
All right. So
We already know what he's gonna say. And it's gonna be like some shit that doesn't always work, right? Like, oh, I'm ready.
so this is like Necropotence on a stick, and I love Necropotence. I think Necropotence is stupidly powerful. It is one of my favorite cards to play in EDH. Every time I look at this card, though, I have to realize this is not Necropotence as much as it wants to copy it.
Nope.
It is nowhere near as good.
We know from last night, yes. Necropotence is nuts.
So, for those of you who aren't paying attention, yes, we played EDH together last night, and I did win off the back of a Necropotence, which is an amazing card. This is not that.
Nope.
You can very quickly find yourself in a position where you're just exiling the top card of your library, or maybe you're exiling 7 cards, and then somebody kills this thing, and you just don't get to put them into your hand. The other thing here being is he only works in those increments of 7 plus whatever you would naturally be drawing, therefore exiling away as well. So whenever you do use his ability to put those cards into your hand, it's going to be hitting you kind of hard. You can't really control it quite as well as what you would for Necropotence. And then, just aside from that, I mean, this thing is stapled onto a body. It's a creature. It's literally the easiest permanent type in Magic to get rid of.
Yep. I kind of said the same thing. You got to kind of build around to make sure those cards don't exile. So, like you were saying, sack him on the activation. I said either way, it seems pretty decent.
I mean, David said knock off Necropotence, but if anything, it's like a great value version of fucking Griselbrand. Like, it's not doing what it needs to do very well. It's like you go to the fucking store and you pick up like the knockoff Fruity Pebbles, and you're like, yeah, I'll have this. But it's not the same, dude.
Dude, don't be shitting on the knockoff Fruity Pebbles, okay? Hey, that bag cereal tastes just as good.
Yeah, you get like 14 fucking pounds of it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, dude.
I don't know. I like that whenever David talks about this card, you're like, dude, I'm gonna break this card so good, dude.
I
just don't see it.
I wanted to break this card so good. It's not happening.
I'm gonna draw 7 and then flicker it and then just fucking draw 7.
I'm giving it a C.
I'm giving it a C.
I'm giving it a C.
Oh! We're gonna get so much shit. Someone's gonna be like, you guys are so dumb. This card's nuts.
This card is an A in my heart. It's a C in real life. My brain says no.
My brain says no. That's an average of a C.
We have Ebondeath, Dracolich up next. This is 2 black for a legendary creature zombie dragon. It's at Mythic. It's a 5/2 with flash flying. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you may cast it from your graveyard if a creature not named Ebondeath Dragonlich died this turn. Hunter, you start us off.
Entering tapped is dumb. This is dumb. I hate it.
Very to the point. Shane, do you have any more words of wisdom?
I think this is dumb. I don't think it's the best for Commander, but I heard an argument this is the best dragon in the set right now.
Tell me why.
Well, the reasoning is not for EDH, so I don't want to totally get into it, but it's a pretty gnarly dragon that never goes away unless you get rid of the graveyard, which I don't know. It doesn't make sense in EDH, right? Because you're still going to have to pay tax, right? Wait, you have to pay the tax if it comes from the graveyard?
No, that's only from the command zone.
Oh, then this card only ever costs 4. That's pretty nuts. You flash it in on the end of your opponent's turn. You got a 5/2 ready to swing. I don't think that's that dumb.
But it's a 5/2. That's it. It's a 5/2 flyer. That's the only thing it is.
Sure, right. I mean, it could do more, dude. Is what I'm saying. Like it's very pesky. I feel like it does not go away very easy.
It comes in tapped.
You're not listening.
His argument here being with like flash is that if you can control whenever another creature is dying, then you can flash this in right before your turn, so on your last opponent's end step. That way, you're only paying 4 for this thing. It is a pesky threat. Sure, it'll intertap, but then you'll start your upkeep and then untap this thing right away, and you're totally fine. It doesn't matter.
I feel like if you're leaving up 4 mana with this in the graveyard, and all your opponents are looking at you like, I know what you're doing.
Well, that's
Look.
fine. Let them know what I'm doing.
I will look at it and I'll be like, congratulations, I will let you spend 4 mana on a big dumb flyer.
Go ahead and waste your 4 mana. Go ahead and leave 4 mana up.
Hey, like I said, it might not be the best argument for EDH, but this card is kind of crazy.
For EDH,
Well-
I think this card sucks. For limited, I think this card is a stupidly powerful thing, and I see how it earns like its mythic rarity there. In EDH, I'm gonna give this thing an F.
EDH, man, we're talking EDH. This is a big ol' F.
I give it a D+.
Just to be difficult. That average is still an F.
I
Now-
said plus though.
Doesn't matter. It's an
Now, keep in mind for our viewers out there is that we are reviewing this specifically from the point of view of this being the commander of your deck, so it's going to be leading it. In the 99, maybe this thing is better than what we're giving it a grade 4 right now. Just keep in mind, this is just specifically with it at the helm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for checking out part 1 of the Monocolored Legendary Creature set review for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. We will be making multiple more parts because there are a ton of legendary creatures for us to review for this. So make sure that you like and subscribe. Check us out with the next video. Thank you so much for listening.
Multiple more.
Bye.